Hey, you guys, I just wanted to do a short, hopefully short, lecture on perspective. So let's get started. Let me just really quickly get to the PowerPoint I created for this. I'm so sorry. Okay, so we're learning about perspective, or why Brunelleschi should be the 5th Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I feel like I'm missing a word in that. Okay, we're going to start with Italy. This is a map from Italy in the 1490s. That's like at the high point of the Renaissance, but we're actually starting like 60 years before that in the 1420s. So what do you know about European history in the 1300s or 1400s? What's happening in Europe is they're just coming out of the Middle Ages. This is a really religious, devout time. There's also Black Death, 1348, that goes all throughout Europe. A third to a half of people die in towns at the time. Countries have started to form. France is a country, Germany is a country. However, in Italy, they're not one unified country yet. There's different, they're called city-states in Italy, and that's what you see on this map. It's kind of like counties, so like LA County versus Orange County. There's tension between these city-states. They each want to be better than the other. They will fight and invade each other. And then they're also, weirdly enough, have this competition to be the most impressive shown by their churches. So there's going to be this rivalry. Okay, we're going to start, let me go back. We're concerned with these two little city-states, the Republic of Florence and the Republic of Siena. The papal states are going to be important later on in the Renaissance, but at the start of the Renaissance, like Rome's kind of devastated just from the whole fall of the empire. So Rome's not really so important, but these two city-states, Florence and Siena, are doing pretty well, and they're in competition with each other. Okay, so let's start with Siena. Siena is a hilltop town in Italy. And they build a new cathedral, and then they have their most respected artist do a painting for it. So Duccio in 1308 does this painting. It's the Maesta. Again, it's for the church, so it's a religious painting. It's a painting of Mary and Jesus. And when he paints it, everyone is blown away by how realistic they think it is. Now, in the Renaissance, this is going to be like a rapid transition, but I'm using this as our starting point because this was seen as like so realistic. Yet 100 years later, this will look so old-fashioned. But I want to start here where we look at this painting. So this is the main panel of the Maesta, but it's for the altar of a church. So, and it's like, when I say church, I mean cathedral. It's humongous space. So the painting actually looked like this, and it was actually a whole network of paintings painted together. But for us to really look at the space, I want us to look at the back of the Maesta. And we're going to look at this panel right here. On the back, there's, if you know your Bible, it's scenes from the life of Jesus. And I want us specifically to look at this scene. Let me move my window. I want us to look at this scene of what's going on. So again, if you know the Bible story, it's Jesus's entry into Jerusalem. If you don't know the Bible story, it's a picture of people entering the town, okay? So I'm telling you that when this was painted, this was amazing to them. Like, they thought this was so realistic. Yet I think now when we look at it, is it so realistic, or are there strange things in this painting? Like, what looks good and what doesn't make sense? So usually when I say this, a lot of students have problems. Like the buildings actually look pretty good if we take them individually, but space doesn't exactly make sense. And I don't know if you guys follow me on that or not, but like this is a crowd of people. Oh, let me try to get there. Sorry, you guys. And the artist paints it just as like people higher than other people to show a crowd, like almost like a thing of grapes, just a whole bunch of heads in a cluster. And then this space, this lower gate, it actually looks pretty good, but it doesn't quite make sense. Like, how is this wall so diagonal? How are the people behind? So you can see that this is an artist that's trying to make space. And again, he's thought of as super successful when he paints this. It's amazing to the people. But now we look at it and we're like, kind of funky. Okay, but he's super successful. He paints it. They have parades through town, bringing the painting to their church. Okay, so let's skip over to the next city-state. Florence is getting nervous because Siena, it has Duccio doing these paintings. They're getting well known all throughout Italy. So Florence has to come up with something to win this competition. So the first thing is they have their most famous painter, Giotto. He does a similar picture. So this is his Maesta of Mary and Jesus. And you can see that what do you guys think? More realistic, less realistic? It seems to be a little more realistic. Like space makes sense. It's not completely solving all the problems though. The angels and backs still look a little strange, right? Like they're still just putting them a little higher to show they're further away. They don't know how to do that. Besides using Giotto's paintings, the city of Florence has a great idea in the 1300s. They say, you know, we're going to tear down our old cathedral and we're going to make a new cathedral in the center of town. And we're going to make this cathedral the biggest cathedral of anywhere around. So they start building their church. Now, this is kind of common sense, but when you start building church, you start at the ground floor. This is their plan. They're going to do this, like, no surprise, it's a cross-shaped church, right? So they're going to start with this like rectangle part and they're going to build it. And eventually they're going to put a giant dome on top. Now we look at the church and we're like, yeah, whatever, they put a giant dome. But for the city of Florence in the 1300s, this was a huge risk. No one knew anymore how to build a dome. The Romans had that technology around 1 AD or CE, whichever dating you want to use, but they had lost that technology in the Middle Ages. So no one knew how to make a huge dome. Other churches in Europe had gone into this like Gothic style where they could do a rectangle, but they would have this pinched roof supported by all these buttresses around it. Now, the city of Florence, though, made a definite choice. They said, we don't want any of those, they thought they were ugly buttresses sticking out. We want a dome. So they started building this church before they even had the technology to finish. But they had faith that eventually someone from their town would figure out how to make a dome. And someone did. Filippo Brunelleschi kind of spends his life trying to figure out how to make a dome. So he grows up in Florence and then he goes to Rome, which again, pretty much in ruins, but it does have domes it has the Pantheon in it. And so from the earlier Roman times, so he sits there studying that. Later, he comes back to Florence because he hears they're having a competition. So the city has started building the church and they're ready to build the dome. So they decide that the people in charge of the government will just invite different artists to apply and show the plans of how they would build a dome. You kind of have to invent how you're going to build the dome. So the different artists try this, but the truth is no one knows how to build the dome at the time. However, Filippo Brunelleschi goes into the room, and the story is, he says, I know how to build the dome. Like, he's insistent. He totally knows how to build the dome, but he has no plans to show for it. And so the city leaders are like, how can we trust you? You have no proof, no plans or anything. And he says, can you make this egg stand on its end? And, you know, everyone looks at an egg and they're like, no. And so then he gets the egg and he smashes the bottom of it and he makes it stand on its end. And he says, and so I will build your dome. Sounds crazy. The Renaissance is full of these like macho stories, but it's actually true. Brunelleschi will go through and actually build, for the, at the time, the largest dome in all of Europe. Let's go back and let's have a moment where we watch what that looks like. Sorry, you guys, I love Florence. Okay, so you can see how big this church is compared to the surrounding areas. This church is mammoth, and it's still one of the defining factors of Florence, Italy, even today. This is the side of the church. Okay, I also want to give you a taste of Florence. So it's a medieval town. It's made in the Middle Ages, and it's full of these small streets. Everything's clustered together. Some streets are bigger than others, but it's just, it's going to become the center, like all our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are from this place. This is the town hall of Florence. Hey, and there's his dome. Okay, I'm saving you from that. Okay, Brunelleschi builds the dome, but then he also invents linear perspective. So that was actually the tangent. Here's the real lecture. Okay, so while they're working on the dome, do I have a mouse here? While they're working on the dome, Brunelleschi, he sits in the doorway. This is the main doorway to the church. And then this building across the way is called the baptistry. It's an older church that was on the spot, but all the citizens of Florence would get baptized in this building. And so it's like, all you need to know is it's an old building in the town that's semi-connected to the church. Like there's space, but you can just see how they're decorated, that they are thought of like as a pair together. So Brunelleschi sets up shop here. He's going to paint a painting of the baptistry. He has this new idea of how to create space that will be better than Duccio, better than Giotto, better than any of them. And one day we'll get to see that. No, okay. So he does this painting of the baptistry. This is what we're looking at. And this painting is supposed to be amazing. Now, we don't have it. Somehow it has been lost in art history. But supposedly it was the baptistry, a painting of it, exactly how it would be. It was the street in front of it and some of the buildings behind. And then he used silver leaf, small, thin pieces of silver for the sky. So it was be reflective. Okay, now here's the funky part where it's kind of hard to explain. So stay with me. He drills a hole through the center of his painting. That's what you see here. And then he does this like funky thing where he holds the painting up to his face, except he's looking at the back of the painting, and he holds a mirror up and he looks through the painting in the mirror. Are you guys with me? So when he does this, he sees what? He sees the painting, right? That's what he would see in the mirror. But then he can put the mirror down and he would look through the painting at whatever is in front of him. Now, he takes everyone Who wants to see this? And he takes them all to stand right where he painted the painting. And he has them stand in the same way, where they hold the painting in front of their face with a mirror and they look through. And when they hold the mirror up, they see the baptistry, they see the painting. But when they put the mirror down, they actually see the baptistry. And then they can hold the mirror up. Impressive, they had mirrors in those days, right? They hold the mirror up and they see the painting again. Supposedly everyone was blown away with how Brunelleschi created space. It was so different than Duccio's. And so then Brunelleschi starts teaching other artists this idea of perspective. He has a student named Alberti, and Alberti will go on and write a book on it. So sometimes when you look up perspective, it says Brunelleschi invented it. Sometimes it says Alberti invented it. But it's because one guy invented it and another guy wrote a book. Okay. Brunelleschi's basic plan is that, and this for 1 point perspective, that space recedes like far away from you. And there will eventually be a horizon line where the earth meets the sky. Along that horizon line, there will be a vanishing point. Brunelleschi's main point is that he calls them orthogonals. Lines that we know are parallel will eventually converge in a vanishing point. And his idea is that actually everything that is regular or man-made will obey this vanishing point. So if this was a perfectly straight road, and if all these telephone poles were exactly the same height, the tops of them too could be connected to convene at this vanishing point. If these trees grew exactly the same as each other, like in the exact same shape, and they were all planted on the same day and the same distance away, the tops of them could also would converge to a vanishing point. Now, this is hard to explain, and I hope you guys understand it. We look like in the age of photography, this isn't a big shock to us. Like, of course things converge, but just take a moment to think about it. Like, what we see, it's like the box tops from before. What we see, it doesn't really exist in reality. Like, it looks like when we look at this picture that these railroad tracks are getting closer and closer and will converge in a point. But in reality, we know this isn't true. If we walk down these railroad tracks, they would stay the same distance apart. What we see is not the truth. It's something different. And this is what Brunelleschi figures out and what he starts to teach other artists. And this is a huge, okay, so now suddenly artists in Florence, all the artists from this one city-state, Florence, can show space, and it's a huge difference for the Renaissance. So this is an artist from Florence, Perugino, and this is his painting. This is actually in the Sistine Chapel, but notice that he's convincingly showing space. And there might be some sort of funky things, but for the most part, we get this three-dimensional space. Notice that if we trace all these lines, they all converge at one point. This is Leonardo da Vinci's sketch for a painting he never finished. Da Vinci's actually really famous for starting work and not finishing it. But this is his painting where you can see that he knows about the idea of perspective and he's trying to use it in his work. This is actually from the doors of that little baptistry, but Guy Ghiberti, who is Brunelleschi's rival in a lot of all these things Brunelleschi is doing. But this guy Ghiberti is a sculptor and he's sculpting these doors, but he also uses this idea of perspective, where if we follow all these lines, they will all join up at one place. Coincidentally, in the Renaissance, you'll see tons of checkered floors and tiled floors. It's how they can really stress perspective and things that will converge in one point. It's a secret that's known in Florence and gradually grows throughout all of Italy, but it gives the city of Florence a huge step up over any other city-state around them. And then we have Leonardo and Da Vinci and Michelangelo and Raphael and Donatello, all from the city of Florence. Donatello was actually Brunelleschi's really good friend. And so like this idea of Brunelleschi, this idea that things that are parallel in space, like in an artwork, will actually converge in one point. This is one point perspective, and it's so important for all of us, even today. We use this. Okay, sorry, going off. Okay, this is Raphael. This is probably his most famous painting. This is the School of Athens. And similar thing, we can follow all these lines. There's some, again, tiled floors are going to be all throughout Renaissance. But even, what I'm saying is all the lines should converge in one point. So like this line going down, if I had a ruler and I extended all these lines, they would meet at one point. And the artists start to think about this, and gradually we'll have this be the most important part of the painting. So if you follow these lines down, I think they actually converge like right here in the painting. Oh, there I have it right down here, sorry. Okay, and then this grows, there's 2-point perspective and there's 3-point perspective, but for our point, I just wanted you guys to have the idea about 1-point perspective, okay? Okay, hope this wasn't too long. See you guys later.